All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome into the WCIA 3-in-1 podcast. Marlee Wierda, joined by Andy Olson. And it was an exciting day as Illinois basketball finally gets back to the core. Andy, I know you and we had very different viewpoints of the whole thing.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was at the game. Andy, you were watching on TV. What were your impressions just watching them?
Well, first off, impressions. I think we talk about coming into this season with high expectations. We know that this team definitely had those coming in. We did an entire 30-minute special about this being the most anticipated team in more than a decade. And it would be a really tough follow-up to come out and then lay an egg, after that. And this was the exact opposite of that. You talk about early on, I know North Carolina A&T kept it close before like the first 10 points were scored. And then after that, it was just all Illinois, which it felt like they couldn't miss when I was watching on TV. Every time they stepped back for a three, it felt like it was going in every single time, which I saw it talked about on Twitter between fans. It doesn't matter that it's North Carolina A&T. You're supposed to beat North Carolina A&T by 62 if you're going to be a top 10 team. So I think that this was as good as a day as it could have been if you are expecting this team to go deep into March and into April. So that's what it looked like from my perspective. Marlee, I know you were at the game, one of the 139 people, I believe, that got to be there. Just what was it like for you? Was it weird without fans? I know you've been to games before with the Orange Crush just out in full force.
It was crazy. And I'm so sorry this is like your first Illinois basketball season that you're experiencing. But
That's
I guess,
okay.
you're kind of in the same boat as the freshmen here. But no, it was really interesting. You walk in and there's like no one there. It's empty. It's quiet. Obviously they had, some music going, so it didn't feel all that weird, but just the fact that this would have been a packed house and people, it probably would have been a sellout for all the hype that was surrounding this Illinois team, for them to just not have anyone there, kind of crickets. It was weird. I didn't like the pumped-in crowd noise that they
saw
did.
a lot of tweets about the pumped-in crowd noise.
I feel like it maybe works better for football because it's outside. Not sure if I was so much a fan for it for a basketball game, but it didn't feel like they were the number 8 team in the country. Like, we were watching one of the highest ranked teams in all of college basketball play again. I felt like I was at a Division III volleyball game during fall break when no students were on campus.
Have you been to a few of those before?
I've been to. Listen, I'm allowed to make fun of Division III sports because I played them, but it just didn't feel like this was the number 8 team in the country. Not because of how they played, obviously it was spectacular, but just the atmosphere was really odd. But I feel lucky in that sense that we were able to go and be some of the select few to be there in the arena. So it was definitely a pretty cool experience, Andy, I gotta say. I'm excited for you to get your turn at it and see how it's gonna be. But definitely very interesting, but a great game nonetheless. I was really impressed with Adam Miller, and kind of going back to what you said, Andy, about just them not missing, especially shooting the game. Sometimes it's difficult when you're paying attention to what you're filming, because you're not so much absorbing a lot of the game. I almost just felt very robotic. It was like, okay, kick it out. Here we go. All right. I was just following it. I was like, okay, it became robotic when I was filming. I was like, okay, this is good. This is the kind of performance that you want to see. But yeah, going back to Adam Miller, he really, really impressed me. I didn't think he was going to come out of the gate that strong. I'd never seen him play in person before. I know our sports director, Brett Behrens, has seen him play in high school, and he won a state championship with Iowa a couple years back. But I was very impressed. What did you think of Adam Miller in his debut?
Well, I thought, what a debut. And honestly, before I get into my Adam thoughts, we do have a question here from Mary. I'm keeping track of the Facebook comments. Mary wants to know what the score was. It was 122-60 against North Carolina A&T. Joel chiming in as well. If they play like that against top-tier teams in a national championship, is not out of the question. You're right, Joel. If they can do that against every team,
I agree.
that is totally in question. Keep the comments coming. We'll read through a few of them.
But if we open through the chat from
absolutely.
there, we can see people on Twitter as well. I don't know.
Live shows, people.
So many people
but
on Twitter.
Adam Miller, I did the story for the Your Illini Nation tip-off show. If you haven't seen it yet, it's on WCIA.com right now. His relationship with Andre Curbelo. It's the first time since 2010 that Illinois has had two top 50 freshmen coming into the team at the same time. So I think that is what just made Adam's debut so interesting, because he made the starting lineup, and I thought that could be the case going into the game. I didn't want to, bet on it or anything, but I thought that 3 spot he had like a strong chance at getting. And then coming out, hitting the first point of the season for the team, hitting another 3 before anyone else had a chance to score, and then going off for 28, breaking the debut record. It was like he couldn't miss. He was as advertised. I mean, he was coming in out of Chicago, hometown of Peoria, but playing at Morgan Park High School with Iowa, where they won a couple of championships. It is as advertised with Adam. And of course, not every game is going to be like that. I mean, Brad talked about in preseason Zooms that you're going to have days where the ball is just not going in, but
this wasn't one of those days.
It was the exact opposite of one of those days today. So Adam, if he continues playing like that, I was thinking about, like, where is this guy going to go in the NBA draft if he keeps playing like that? Is he going to come back for year 2? And clearly it is way, way too early to be thinking about those things. But this is just, one of the pathways that he can take in his career. And it's going to be so exciting, seeing him continue that.
Yeah. And not to compare him to Io, because I think they're going to get that a lot this season. And just because they went to the same high school, it's going to happen. Yeah. They're both guards. They're going to get compared against each other. But I think his debut far surpassed Io's debut, and see the kind of player that Io has grown into. So bright future certainly ahead for Adam Miller. He was 10 for 12 for field goals, 6 for 8 behind the arc. That is incredibly
That's
impressive.
what people were talking about coming into this year, was if there was one weakness, it's that, their best 3-point shooter was no longer with the team. And you talk about where that kind of production is going to come from, because in modern basketball, you need to rely on the 3 ball at least a little bit. That's going to get you more points than just, pounding inside. So finding that in game 1, breaking the school record for 3-pointers in the game. We haven't even mentioned that yet. 17 for the entire team. That kind of puts that question to bed. And of course, again, it's not going to be like that every game, but just what an all-around team performance for everyone.
Yeah. And, Adam Miller, he said some great things in his post-game press conference. I asked him, when you thought about your college debut, did you expect it to be like this, in the sense of, okay, having no fans, but also putting up a performance like this? And here's what he said.
Prepared for this game. I just kept my head on straight before the game. I'm just thinking, like, the time's come. I've done this too many times. Like junior year, start of the year, senior year, start of the year, I feel like I had pressure. But at this point in my life, I'm like, just go out there and do you, have fun. I'm going to do that every single game. So every single game, I feel like you guys this year, they shouldn't be surprised if I put up numbers like this and go out and play hard.
I love that.
Yeah.
He says, you shouldn't be surprised. Like that kind of confidence coming from a freshman, you got to love it.
Chris bringing up in the Facebook comments, at least the ones that I'm looking at, Kofi running the sprints after the game. I don't know if you had a chance to see that.
Yes, I did.
You were there for the post-game press conference, but super impressed. I mean, talk about a team being, selling out and being into this season. That kind of proves it when you're, practicing and still running sprints after the game. That's just a different level mentality that hasn't been seen in a while, I feel like.
And Brad Underwood has talked so much about the culture and building this team. And earlier in the year, before the season had started, he said the culture is where I want it to be right now. And I think that's so important for a program, because when you're a new head coach and you're coming into a team, that the first couple of years is just that, building the culture. Now that he has all these guys that are bought into that, it makes it so much easier for him to just coach on the court and focus on that, as opposed to everything off the court or in practice when you're trying to build that culture. And I want to bring up as well the defense, because obviously there's going to be games where these shots don't fall. This might not happen. It could, but this kind of these percentages might not happen every game. And there was one point, it was in the first half of the game. It was 9 minutes where they had kept North Carolina A&T to just 5 points. And I think that's so important. It's the old cliche, defense wins championships, but I mean, they were bulldogs out there, just diving for balls and doing what they could if the shots, didn't fall.
It's funny when I go back to the pregame press conferences. I mean, Trent Frazier was the one who was preaching that going into this game. He was the one who really talked about that they're not overlooking North Carolina A&T and that the defense would have to be, the thing that carries them in the game.
Mm-hmm.
The offense could have carried them as well, but it was
Oh.
nice to see the defense, pick it up as well. And Trent not having the best game, statistically, if you're just looking at the stats, because stats are mostly offense, but only 6 points, but able to make a true impact on the game. I feel like his production and just presence out there was super important to the team, and DeMonte as well had a terrific game.
And I think they rotated like the positioning a lot. It was interesting because sometimes it was Adam kind of playing the 1, or it was Io, and they kind of mix between the 1, 2, and 3, whatever it may be. And I think that just goes to show the versatility, like maybe next game it's Trent Frazier that has an outstanding game. And I think they just really moved the ball around today. I mean, for both Io and Adam to have 28 points, that says a lot. Usually it was just Io putting up these kind of numbers. There was kind of like one big star of the game, but for them to kind of have offensive production on all aspects, I think it just really speaks volumes to the team. But
sorry, not to
go
interrupt,
ahead.
but I think that is what's going to be so important about how good this team is going to be down the stretch, because when you have different players who can pop off on each night, and you're not relying on just one person to do it every single time, that, speaks to the ability of a team to win games, because there are games when Io or Adam are not going to have 28 points, and who's going to be able to step up, and having those different team players who are able to do that. I mean, Trent has had games where he's in the 20s. DeMonte has had games where he's popped off, Georgie has had games where he's popped off.
Right.
Maybe not last year, but you go back to his freshman season. He's had games where he's popped off. And Kofi is going to have those games. He had a good game today, but I feel like we're barely talking about him. I mean, he had an outstanding game down low where he was just able to bully the Aggies. So having those team players and to spread out the playmaking ability is going to be super important, I think, down the stretch. And there's only so much we can talk about from one game, but they looked really good.
Absolutely. And going back to just kind of guys playing together, I think one big question that Illini Nation had coming into the season was, okay, how are Io and Adam going to play together? Because, Adam, I guess the rumor was that he was coming to Illinois because he thought Io was leaving for the NBA draft. And now that they're playing on the same team together, people are kind of like, oh, how is that dynamic going to work? But I think they really, played well off each other. And Brad Underwood spoke a little bit about that after today's game.
Well, Io's a great distributor as well as he is scorer. And, in the open court, Io's one of the elite players in college basketball. We saw that today. And, I've told Adam he can simplify the game for himself and just get his feet wet by just running the floor hard. And he'll get a lot of open shots. And that proved to be the case today. So, as teams load up on Io, and they load up on Kofi or Georgie, and ball screen actions rolling to the rim, it gets very hard to tag off them. When DeMonte's doing that, when Adam does that, those guys are going to get some good looks. So again, Io does what a really good player does, and that's make his teammates better, and Adam will benefit from that.
And they're certainly lucky to have Io back for another season after he returns, after taking his name out of the NBA draft. And one thing I'm looking at right now, too, is the rebounding, which I'm just now noticing. 62 total rebounds, 42 defensive rebounds, 20 offensive rebounds. That is outstanding. And I think last season is when they kind of coined themselves as the rebounding team. And man, that's pretty incredible. I'm pretty impressed with that.
Yeah, and you think about the other teams that are in this MTE, Chicago State tomorrow, Ohio the day after. There's no reason why they can't, keep this up. I mean, they schedule these games, I feel like, it's almost as exhibitions in themselves.
Sure,
I mean,
that's what it kind of felt like today.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, okay.
I mean, you're not going to get any in the preseason, so your non-conference games kind of have to be exhibition games. They definitely did not schedule lighter after this MTE with
No way.
Baylor, Duke, and then keeping up the bragging rights game with Missouri. So to see kind of what they do in these last 2 MTE games, and then it's on to Baylor at the Jimmy V Classic, which I mean, I am just so much more excited. I was excited before, so much more now, after seeing what the team can do against, a lowly opponent. But Chicago State tomorrow, Marlee, I mean,
Yep.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think, just going back to like cliche, it's like you got to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat and upset the teams that you're not supposed to beat. And I think, that'll be a big test for this team. I think it'll start to get a little bit more exciting. Not that this game wasn't incredible, but for them to have a real test against a high major opponent opposed to, the teams that are coming into the State Farm Center this weekend, I think is when we're really going to start to see this team take form. But for them to come out and dominate, that's what great teams do. They could have so easily dropped to the level of this team today, but they kept their ground. They stayed at the level that they're at or want to continue to be at. And I think that will bode really well for them heading forward into this season. So like you said, Andy, Chicago State tomorrow. They play on Thanksgiving, a little Turkey Day action. We'll be here to cover it all. Any final thoughts, Andy, before we head off? Just
really excited to cover the team this season. It's going to be a long way. I'm hoping that everyone stays safe, has a happy Thanksgiving, and that the team stays safe throughout the season. Every team stays safe. So it's going to be great. And Chris Miller, one last point in. Let's score 100 plus 3 games in a row. I think fans would really enjoy that, right, Chris. So we'll see if they can do it. Definitely on the cards, I think, for Chicago State tomorrow.
All right, awesome. Well, for Andy, I'm Marlee. This has been the WCIA 3-in-1 podcast.